Greetings, YouTube. When I'm on the internet, either on my channel or in other places, I frequently hear the folks from the conservative set complaining about this thing called the victim complex. Now, they only tend to bring it up when someone has been the victim of some form of oppression or criminal act at the hands of another. And the other is important here. You see, if the victimizer, if the persecutor involved in this is not white, there's no victim complex. The victim is legitimate in their complaint of being oppressed or being the victim of an actual criminal act. And I should point out that for the people I'm discussing here, for example, anyone of a non-Christian faith is considered not white because they conflate religion and ethnicity on a regular basis. Only white people are real Christians. Everybody else is a non-Christian. Occasionally, they'll let people that are a browner shade be Christians if it serves their needs. But most of the time, when they say brown people, they're including Buddhists and Muslims and Zoroastrians and everybody else. So if the victim is being persecuted by someone that isn't white, and particularly if the victim themselves is white, then there is no victim complex. Victim complex is saved when the victim of something, hate speech, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, you name it, is not white. It's pretty simple. White people don't have victim complexes. Everybody else does have a victim complex. And particularly, they like to use that term when we're talking about endemic institutionalized racism and classism and economic inequality and things that are the very foundation stones of white power, particularly in America, but at the world in large. And when those people say that they've been the victim of these things at the hands of white people, that's when the victim complex term pops up. They very much hate the idea that people point out the reality that white people have been the victimizers, have been the persecutors of an entire nations, of entire faiths, of entire ethnicities, of the entire friggin' planet for centuries through the mechanisms of colonialism and economic control of markets, all at the hands of white people. Unless, of course, they're complaining about things not going their way, and then they tell people it's the Jewish folks that are behind the economic control. It's very confusing. I'm not sure how these white people keep it all straight in their head. I'm starting to believe that there's just a big jumble of horrible things inside their skulls. But that's when the term victim complex comes into play, because the person saying that is identifying with the victimizer, with the person that is the persecutor, because they are of the same class as the victimizer and the persecutor. So obviously, one of their own can't be guilty of such a heinous act as harassment or oppression. So it must be the person complaining that's the real issue at hand. It's the classic victim blaming. It just sounds better. Saying that someone has a victim complex just makes it sound so much more academic, when it's just the same old, tired, racist, bigoted, white supremacist tropes with a shiny new coating of filth on top. So whenever someone uses the term victim complex, start looking at them. Start looking at what are they trying to deny and who are they identifying with. Do they have sympathy, empathy, and compassion for the victim of harassment or oppression? Or are they allying themselves with the oppressor or the harasser? Because it's probably going to be the latter. And it's not going to make them look good. And if you point this out, well, then you're the real enemy now, aren't you? And if I point this out, I will almost always be called a race traitor. Because you see, I'm a really white dude. And really white dudes aren't allowed to point out that other white people can be just fucking awful.